Voters in Namibia will go to the polls on 27th of November to choose their next president and parliamentary representatives. The ruling party in Namibia, Swapo, is facing stiff competition from other political parties. It has been in power since independence in 1990. The party has elected a female candidate who's also the vice president of the country, NetumboNandi-Ndaitwah, to be their presidential candidate. Now, for more analysis on this, we are joined by an analyst and senior advisor at the Nordic Africa Institute based in Sweden, Professor Henning Melber. It's great to have you, and thank you very, very much for your time.
Good morning, Leanne. It's nice to be with you and the viewers.
Thanks, Prof. Now, I mean, Namibia is facing challenges that it sounds like the whole world is going through. Economy, unemployment, land issues. These are very, very difficult issues to combat and ones that are at the center of these elections. What are the contesting parties' manifestos saying about these particular challenges?
The party manifestos basically all share exactly those topical items as priorities on their agenda. So if you look at the different party manifestos, there is not much difference. That's in quite some striking contrast to the party manifestos that were discussed in South Africa. There is a broad consensus that those issues you listed, unemployment, all also mentioned corruption, service delivery, housing, health, are shared between all the parties.
And this is, this has been something that we've been taking place the entire year. I mean, we've often said that this year has been groundbreaking in the amount of elections that have been taking place. But besides that, it's been groundbreaking in terms of the response from those that have gone in and voted for change. So let's look at this. I mean, former liberation movement Swapo, they've been in firm political control of Namibia since independence in the 1990s. Where do they stand at this point? Who are the top parties at the moment, and do they risk the fact that this may not be going in their favor?
We could observe since the elections in 2019 and the regional and local elections in 2020 that the support of Swapo as the dominant party was reduced. That adds to the nervousness when watching the election campaigns now. We generally observe, like in South Africa, like in Botswana, like in Mozambique, that there is a lifespan of former liberation movements as governments which seems to approach an end, at least when it comes to the effectiveness of the heroic narrative, meaning we liberated you, you owe us. Electorate, meanwhile, is composed mainly of the born free, and they have not these internalized loyalties to the former liberation movement, but they check where is the delivery, and they base the decision for whom to vote on other factors than having been liberated. They grew up in a democratic society. So there is a degree of nervousness to be observed in Namibia. But in contrast to South Africa, for example, there are no reliable surveys or polls, which leaves a lot of room for speculations what might happen. And we basically only know after the 27th of November. What is important is that every country has its own dynamics. It doesn't mean that Namibia replicates what happened in South Africa or in Botswana, and Swapo remains very confident that it will retain power.
That's, I suppose, to be seen. I mean, we see that the current president, Swapo's current president, Nangolo Mbumba, has not made himself available as a presidential candidate for the polls. Why? And who's expected to stand in?
He was not supposed to make himself available. He was the replacement following the unexpected death of President Hage Geingob in office as the vice president, but as a caretaker, and he immediately announced that he will not challenge NetumboNandi-Ndaitwah, who was already nominated as the party's presidential candidate for the elections. So that is basically business as usual.
Okay, so let's look at other parties now. Popular Democratic Movement and Independent Patriots for Change. That's an interesting party, the IPC. What are they saying? And perhaps maybe talk to us about the formation of these particular parties.
PDM is the successor to a previous party, which was actually campaigning against Swapo under United Nations supervision for independence. And it has become increasingly less of a predominantly white party, and it became the official opposition party ever since independence. But IPC is the new kid on the block, with Panduleni-Ndaitwah coming from Swapo, campaigning as independent candidate in the presidential elections 5 years ago, and taking 30% of the vote from President Hage Geingob, who was re-elected. So everyone is keen to see to what extent Panduleni-Ndaitwah in the presidential elections and IPC, as the new party he created, are able to snatch votes from Swapo and Swapo's presidential candidate.
Yeah. I mean, please continue, please continue, Prof.
The decisive criteria will be to what extent is any party, except Swapo, able to make inroads in the northern regions, which are the home base of Swapo and has the majority of voters. That will be the decisive factor. And so far, Swapo benefited from these strongholds. If they hold, Swapo retains power.
I mean, this is a groundbreaking for Swapo, and it really is. And I mean, when you read what a lot of people are saying, that, you know, it seems more and more uncertain that Swapo will even get a clear victory in this one. In your view, what do these upcoming presidential and National Assembly elections signify in Namibia?
They signify, as in other countries, important demographic shift. The electorate is not any longer the same as it used to be years ago. You have a younger electorate basing its criteria whom to vote for not on an internalized loyalty to the former Liberation Party as government. I think that's the most decisive factor.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about in the Party Congress in December 2023, the presidential candidate there for Swapo is NetumboNandi-Ndaitwah, also known as NNN. This will be the first female head of state if elected, but obviously there's massive competition, and I think we've covered that. But the first female president, perhaps looming.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting questions, Leanne. Is Namibia ready for a female head of state? The verdict is pending. If the loyalty to Swapo and casting the votes for Swapo includes casting the votes for a female candidate, then she seems to be on safe grounds. But again, we need to wait and see.
And this is also quite an interesting one because the president is directly elected by 50% plus one vote from the electorate. And there's several presidential candidates that are nominated by parties with notable followings. So it's a difficult one to predict at this point.
It's difficult to predict, and it's, hypothetically speaking, one of the most interesting scenarios, presuming that a non-Swapo candidate, in this case Panduleni-Ndaitwah, would manage to be elected directly as head of state. That's the difference to South Africa. Namibians elect in parallel votes members for the National Assembly and directly the president. So hypothetically, albeit unlikely, it could be that a non-Swapo candidate becomes president while Swapo maintains a majority in the National Assembly.
Yeah.
And then the far-reaching executive powers of the president is facing problems potentially because cabinet must be recruited from the members of parliament, which the other way around would also apply to Triple N if she would be elected, but Swapo loses the absolute majority in parliament. These are all hypothetical scenarios, but ahead of the elections, analysts are dealing with those matters under the approach, what if?
Well, what if, and we'll see. Because Prof Henning, interesting elections coming up, and we'll see this all happening. And, you know, who knows, this could be another repeat of what happened in South Africa, because it just seems that way. And we wonder if Swapo can get that mindset and nostalgic vote that has always kept it in power. And we may see a lot of this politics as what we're seeing happening here in South Africa with these governments of national unity and people coming together to rule. I mean, that may be a big possibility, Prof.
It's a possibility, but maybe we just see that Swapo is the one former liberation movement which remains in power and survives.
All right, let's see what happens. Prof Henning Melber, thanks so much. He's an analyst, he's a senior advisor at the Nordic Africa Institute, unpacking the upcoming Namibian elections. We'll see those taking place next week, so it should be an interesting one, as you heard there from the Prof giving us his analysis. Let's take a break. We'll see you after this.